Robert Mitchum's relationship with Hollywood was as unconventional as the man himself, but amid the many figures he encountered, there was one actor he could never tolerate: Glenn Ford. More than any other person in the industry, Mitchum harbored an unshakable disdain for Ford. To understand this, one must first look at Mitchum's early life, which shaped the restless, defiant persona that would eventually clash with so many of Hollywood's carefully polished players. Born Robert Charles Durr Mitchum on August 6, 1917, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, his beginnings were marked by hardship and instability. His father, a railroad worker of Norwegian and Scottish descent, died tragically in an accident when Robert was only 2. This loss left his mother struggling to raise 3 children with virtually no financial resources, forcing the family to move frequently in search of stability. The scarcity of money and the uncertainty of his early childhood created a sense of loneliness and vulnerability, but it also forged a resilience and toughness that would later define Mitchum's screen presence. As a young man, Mitchum developed a wanderlust that led him to crisscross the country in a seemingly endless pursuit of freedom and work. He hopped freight trains, took any job that offered a wage, and occasionally ran afoul of the law, including brief stints in jail due to homelessness. These experiences cultivated in him a deep mistrust of authority and a perspective as an outsider looking in. The hardships he endured, poverty, displacement, encounters with law enforcement, served as a real-world education far beyond what any acting school could provide. He understood anger, loneliness, rebellion, and the restless energy of youth in ways that allowed him to convey authenticity on screen that no actor who had lived a cushioned life could replicate. Mitchum's journey to Hollywood fame was neither immediate nor glamorous. In the early 1940s, he worked behind the scenes on film sets, taking bit parts with few or no lines, gradually learning the intricacies of movie production and the rhythms of acting. His persistence paid off in 1945 with his role in the story of G.I. Joe, where he played Lieutenant Bill Walker, a battle-worn and weary officer. The film earned him critical acclaim and an Academy Award nomination, cementing his reputation as a rising talent. Mitchum's approach to acting was unconventional. He spoke slowly, moved minimally, and conveyed emotion through subtle gestures, a lifted eyebrow, a slight tilt of the head, eschewing the exaggerated expressions common among his contemporaries. While some critics dismissed this as disinterest, audiences recognized the power of his restrained performance. Here was a man whose inner life was rich, layered, and deeply compelling. By the late 1940s and into the 1950s, Mitchum had established himself as a central figure in film noir, a genre perfectly suited to his brooding, enigmatic presence. Films such as Out of the Past, 1947, showcased him as the archetypal anti-hero, a man convinced of the inevitability of fate, deeply passionate yet seemingly doomed. His characters were often haunted by past mistakes and personal flaws, unable or unwilling to rectify them. Yet Mitchum never sought audience sympathy. Instead, he challenged viewers to understand the complexity of human behavior, to recognize that life rarely provides clean resolutions. In these roles, he embodied a quiet defiance and moral ambiguity that set him apart from the archetypal heroes and villains of his era. Despite rising fame, Mitchum maintained an irreverent attitude toward Hollywood's polished image and pretension. He famously claimed that acting was not particularly difficult, an assertion that irritated some peers but reflected his core belief that authenticity outweighed technical perfection. This honesty, combined with his refusal to conform to studio expectations, only enhanced his mystique. Controversy seemed to follow him naturally. In 1948, he was arrested for marijuana possession, an incident that temporarily halted his career and generated widespread media attention. Mitchum, however, did not apologize or express regret. Instead, he returned to the public eye with an air of defiance that made him even more fascinating. The scandal seemed only to strengthen the aura of a man unwilling to bow to societal norms or Hollywood pressures. In the 1950s and 1960s, Mitchum demonstrated remarkable versatility, extending beyond the confines of noir. In westerns such as River of No Return and El Dorado, he imbued the stoic cowboy archetype with a human warmth and depth rarely seen in the genre. In The Night of the Hunter, 1955, he delivered a performance that remains chilling to this day as the sinister preacher Harry Powell, perfectly balancing menace with subtlety. In Cape Fear, 1962, he portrayed Max Cady, a relentless ex-convict driven by vengeance, illustrating the darker extremes of human obsession and cruelty. Even in his later years, in films like Farewell, My Lovely, 1975, and Heaven's Gate, 1980, Mitchum brought a reflective quality to his roles, conveying the weight of past choices, the passage of time, and the inevitability of mortality with quiet, nuanced gravitas. Mitchum's personal life mirrored the complexity of his on-screen roles. He married Dorothy Spence in March 1940, and together they had 3 children. Their marriage, largely shielded from the public glare, lasted nearly 60 years, an extraordinary accomplishment in an industry notorious for short-lived unions. Yet, the facade of stability belied the turbulence beneath. Mitchum's restless spirit and numerous affairs painted a portrait of a man unwilling to be constrained by conventional morality. Despite the rumors and betrayals, Dorothy remained with him, hinting at a deep, unspoken understanding and commitment that endured through decades of challenges. Their relationship was defined not by perfection, but by resilience, mutual history, and a tolerance born of knowing each other intimately for a lifetime. Mitchum's blunt, often sarcastic manner defined him as much as his acting. He did not soften his words to please others, and his sharp wit could be both charming and intimidating. Among all the actors he encountered, Glenn Ford provoked a particularly intense reaction. While Mitchum acknowledged Ford's talent, he detested the polished, strategic persona Ford cultivated. Ford epitomized what Mitchum considered the worst aspects of Hollywood: careful ambition, image-conscious calculation, and a willingness to manipulate relationships with producers and directors to advance his career. Ford projected an air of sincerity, while in Mitchum's view, constantly scheming behind the scenes. For Mitchum, who valued spontaneity, honesty, and risk-taking, Ford represented everything inauthentic about the industry. Their rivalry was rooted in opposing philosophies of both life and craft. Mitchum approached acting as a means of vulnerability and honesty, taking chances that could make him appear flawed or human. Ford, by contrast, prioritized safety and predictability, seeking performances that would earn praise without risk. This fundamental difference extended beyond professional considerations. Ford's seriousness, humorlessness, and moral posturing clashed with Mitchum's irreverent, free-spirited outlook. Mitchum viewed Ford's cultivated piety and performative decency as hypocritical, a facade designed to elevate himself, while judging those who lived more openly and authentically. Unlike many Hollywood feuds, there was no public back and forth. Mitchum simply refused to grant Ford respect, a private but unwavering judgment that persisted until the end of his life. Integral to Mitchum's identity were habits that he never hid or sugar-coated. Heavy smoking was a constant throughout his adult life, shaping both his on-screen image and his personal existence. The cigarette dangling from his lips became a signature of casual defiance, conveying both danger and indifference in his performances. Off-screen, it was a simple pleasure, unencumbered by notions of restraint or moderation. Mitchum did not pretend that his choices came without consequences, but he embraced life's pleasures fully, without excessive concern for cost. Over time, however, the toll of decades of smoking became evident, culminating in lung cancer during his later years. Despite declining health, he faced the illness with the same stoic, sarcastic resolve that had characterized his entire life. There were no public confessions, no appeals for sympathy. He confronted the consequences with the same self-reliant, unapologetic mindset he had always maintained. On July 1, 1997, Robert Mitchum passed away in Santa Barbara, California, at the age of 79, succumbing to complications from lung cancer. His death signified more than the loss of a celebrated actor. It marked the end of an era, the closing of a chapter in Hollywood history. Mitchum was one of the last true anti-heroes, a man who resisted the studio system, defied conventional morality, and lived by his own rules. The illness that took him was a stark reminder of human vulnerability, yet it did not define his legacy. That legacy remained firmly anchored in the performances he left behind, shaped by lived experience, resilience, and a willingness to confront life unflinchingly. His work on screen captured the rough edges, moral ambiguity, and authenticity that had been central to his persona, making him a figure whose impact extended far beyond mere popularity. Throughout his career, Mitchum defied easy categorization. He was a man of contradictions, rebellious yet disciplined, cynical yet capable of tenderness, reckless yet deeply committed to the authenticity of his craft. He never conformed to expectations, whether in the choices he made as an actor, the way he navigated his personal life, or his interactions with colleagues and the industry at large. These contradictions enriched his performances, giving them a layered complexity that few could emulate. From the battle-scarred Lieutenant Bill Walker to the malevolent Max Cady, Mitchum brought a consistent thread of truth to every role, embodying human flaws, desires, and fears with an unvarnished realism that became his trademark. His marriage to Dorothy Spence remained a testament to endurance amid imperfection. It was not a fairy tale romance shielded from the world, but a partnership that endured decades of challenges, infidelity, and public scrutiny. Mitchum's life outside of the camera was as compelling as anything he portrayed on it, filled with the tensions between his restless nature and the stability of family, between defiance and loyalty. His choices, though sometimes controversial, reflected a commitment to living life fully and honestly, even when that honesty included moral complexity and personal flaws. Mitchum's feud with Glenn Ford encapsulated his broader worldview. He valued sincerity, spontaneity, and artistic risk, despising the carefully constructed veneers of ambition and image management he saw in others. Ford represented the antithesis of Mitchum's philosophy, and the actor's dislike was both personal and principled. Yet Mitchum's contempt never overshadowed his understanding of Ford's success. He acknowledged the popularity and acclaim Ford enjoyed, but drew a strict distinction between public approval and genuine respect. For Mitchum, true respect was earned through authenticity on and off screen, not merely by skill or charm. Even in his final years, Mitchum's presence was defined by the habits and traits he had cultivated for decades. His voice, slow and deliberate, his gaze, calm yet piercing, and his unhurried movements created a palpable aura of lived experience. Smoking, sarcasm, and a willingness to confront life's consequences head-on were all part of his enduring identity. When illness began to sap his strength, he did not soften or reinvent himself for sympathy or public perception. Instead, he continued to embody the persona that had defined him throughout his career, a man who lived entirely on his own terms, whose legacy was built on honesty, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to authenticity. Mitchum's death in Santa Barbara brought a sense of closure not only to his life, but to an era of Hollywood defined by rugged individualism, anti-heroism, and the subtle power of understated performance. It served as a reminder that even legends are mortal, that choices carry consequences, and that living authentically often comes with both rewards and costs. Yet, the way Mitchum conducted his life and career ensured that he would be remembered not for how he died, but for how he lived, uncompromisingly, fully, and truthfully. His characters, forged from experience, defiance, and insight, remain lasting testaments to a man who refused to conform, who challenged audiences to see beyond the surface, and who left behind a body of work defined by depth, realism, and moral complexity. From his turbulent childhood to his rebellious youth, from his unconventional rise in Hollywood to his enduring marriage, from his legendary roles to his public feuds, Robert Mitchum lived a life that defied formula. He embodied the contradictions of humanity in all their rugged complexity. His performances captured the essence of real human emotion, its contradictions, its flaws, its intensity, while his personal life illustrated a relentless pursuit of independence, self-expression, and authenticity. His disdain for Glenn Ford was one of the few constants in an ever-changing industry, a reflection of his belief that some masks, no matter how popular, were intolerable. Every choice he made, whether in love, work, or personal conduct, reinforced a single principle: the value of being real above all else. Ultimately, Mitchum's legacy is a testament to the enduring power of lived experience in shaping art. He transformed hardship, rebellion, and personal complexity into performances that continue to resonate. He brought to life characters whose moral ambiguity mirrored his own, whose humanity was palpable, and whose struggles felt authentic. In doing so, Mitchum left an indelible mark on Hollywood history, creating a standard of anti-heroism, authenticity, and cinematic subtlety that remains unmatched. His death may have closed the chapter on his life, but the story he told through his work, and through the choices he made, continues to influence actors, filmmakers, and audiences, standing as a model of living and performing unflinchingly, without apology, and on one's own terms.